None went out, and none came in. The book of Joshua, chapter 6, verse 1, the fall of Jericho. In brief, passage. The book of Joshua, chapters 2 and 6. Theme, God and war and conquest. Setting, 14th to 13th century BCE Jericho. The date is disputed by some archaeologists. Key figures. Moses' successor as leader, the Israelites and commander of their army. Rahab, a prostitute or innkeeper living in Jericho, who shelters Joshua's spies and helps them to elude their pursuers. Joshua's conquest of the city of Jericho is the start of God's fulfillment of his covenant with the Israelites, their settlement of Canaan, the promised land. Drawing on oral traditions and written sources, the authors of Joshua probably wrote the account during the Babylonian captivity of around 560 BC in order to raise the spirits of the exiles. The story encourages the Israelites to believe that they can prevail however poor their chances if they put their trust in God. Having crossed the Jordan River, Joshua plans to take Jericho, a seemingly impregnable structure. Archaeological evidence reveals that the city was built on a mound surrounded by a massive earthen embankment, with a 12 to 15 foot high retaining wall around its base. Two mud brick walls augmented this, one on top of its base and the other at the crest of the embankment. In addition, the Bible tells us Jericho is well provisioned for a siege. A spring inside the city walls provides fresh water, while the city's granaries are full to bursting with freshly harvested grain. The faith of Rahab. To find out as much as he can about the city's defenses, Joshua sends two followers, Caleb and the high priest Eleazar, to spy on the city. Once inside Jericho, the men rest for the night in the house of a woman named Rahab near the city gates. Rahab, either a prostitute or innkeeper, according to different translations, is soon faced with a dilemma. The Israelites have been spotted and the king's guards are in pursuit. Rahab hides the spies under stalks of flax drying on her roof and tells the guards that the men left at dusk. When the coast is clear, Rahab helps the Israelites escape. She said, "The Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below." The book of Joshua, chapter 2, verse 11. They promise that she and her family will be spared when the Israelites attack. She's told to hang a scarlet thread or cord out of her window as a signal to keep her home safe. The spies report back to Joshua that, although Jericho's defenses are strong, its people are demoralized by the Israelite threat. When Joshua considers his best strategy, a man carrying a drawn sword appears before him. Some biblical scholars say this is the angel of the Lord, but others argue that it is God himself. The figure tells Joshua exactly what he must do. He is to march his soldiers in silence around Jericho once a day for 6 days, bearing the Ark of the Covenant, preceded by the priests blowing ram's horns. On the 7th day, the Israelites are to march around the city 7 times. The priests must then blow the last blast on the trumpet while the people raise a mighty shout. Joshua does what God has ordered. After the final trumpet blast and the shout, the walls of the city crumble and fall down flat. Joshua's soldiers storm into Jericho, slaughtering its inhabitants and then burning it to the ground. Rahab and her family are spared. Cursed before the Lord is the one who undertakes to rebuild the city, Jericho. The book of Joshua, chapter 6, verse 26. God's triumph. The Israelite victory is complete. God has shown the Israelites he is on their side, and Joshua's unwavering obedience to God has allowed them to prosper under his leadership. However, the story of his city razed to the ground, its women and children slaughtered, unsettles many modern readers, in whom indiscriminate destruction is incompatible with the concept of an ethical God. The explanation perhaps lies in the conquest being a metaphor for the power of faith and obedience. The character of Rahab is key. Although she is a foreigner and possibly a prostitute, she is redeemed through her faith and good works. Archaeological finds of Jericho. One of the oldest continually inhabited cities in the world, ancient Jericho is a site of considerable archaeological importance. Excavations showed the first settlements appeared about 8,000 BC and were repeatedly destroyed and rebuilt over the following millennia. However, it is clear that the city was invaded at some point in its history Most archaeologists dispute the biblical account. British archaeologist Kathleen Kenyon concluded that Jericho did not who worked at Jericho in the 50s, concluded that Jericho did not exist at the time Joshua is said to have conquered it. Jericho, Kenyon postulated, was destroyed, but it was the Hyksos of southern Egypt in around 1550 BC, about 150 years earlier than the biblical account. Kenyon's findings also suggest that the city wall, which previously had been dated to the time of the Israelites, actually dates from the early Bronze Age 1,000 years before. However, the story of the Israelite conquest may have some credence. It is possible that the Israelites conquered a town that had sprung up on the ruins of an earlier settlement.